and welcome to the Watchman from TBN's Jerusalem studio. You know, folks, there are certain themes that we like to hit here at Christians United for Israel and on the Watchman show on a regular basis. Number one, Israel is the first line of defense for Western civilization, and if Israel goes down, we all go down. Number two, Israel's enemies are America's enemies, and the same radical forces that seek to wipe Israel off the map also have a bullseye on the back of the United States and every American. And number three, the U.S.-Israel relationship is strong. It's essential for both countries, and it is irreplaceable. These are very important themes, folks, to understand, and that's why we are so privileged today to have two great guests who specialize not only in the U.S.-Israel relationship, but the shared threats and opportunities that our two countries have together. Yoram Ettinger is an expert on the U.S.-Israel relationship and a former Israeli ambassador who spent a good deal of time in the United States. And Chris Mitchell is a veteran journalist who's been based here in Jerusalem for 16 years as the Middle East Bureau Chief for CBN News. He's also author of a great new book called ISIS, Iran, and Israel. Both men are good friends of Christians United for Israel. And folks, when you get two guests that are this good, you gotta give them a whole show. So today, Chris and Yoram form a Watchman all-star panel, and I think you're really gonna enjoy their insights and their warnings about not only the threats gathering against America and Israel, but why our two countries need to keep that irreplaceable bond and why every Christian should stand with the Jewish state. It's Yoram Ettinger and Chris Mitchell today on The Watchman with Christians United for Israel. Take a look. Well, Yoram, Chris, welcome to The Watchman.
Thank you.
Great to have you here in sunny, beautiful Jerusalem. Quite a view here.
Amazing.
Well, Chris, you had a different view recently. You just came back from Brussels. I think that's a great place to start. Obviously, we're in the wake of this horrific terror attack carried out by ISIS in Brussels. What did you learn on the ground there?
Well, I learned that, just a few guys can really upset a whole city and actually shake a whole continent right now. These guys came from a place called Molenbeek, which is sort of the jihad capital of Europe. I mean, that's what they call Brussels. And these guys have not only been involved in the Brussels attack, but the Paris attack, the Charlie Hebdo attack. And we talked to a counterterrorism expert there who said there are 7,000 to 10,000 jihadists like that throughout Europe, and 5,000 more that support them. So this is a massive threat to Europe. It was right there in the heart of Europe, right just a few blocks from the European Union capital. And it's really a major threat to Europe.
Chris, stunning, and a threat to America as well, because Western Europeans can enter the United States without a visa.
That's right.
And we have this pipeline of Westerners going to join ISIS. I think it's great that we have you guys in particular on this panel today. Chris, you're an American journalist living here in Jerusalem. Yoram, you were a diplomat in America. You spent a lot of time on Capitol Hill. Speaking of terror, I think that's a great segue, Yoram. What is Israel doing? Israel's doing so many things. It's on the cutting edge in the fight against Islamic terror. But what are some of the ways that Israel's technology, its innovations in the war on terror are helping America?
Well, for instance, FBI just hacked the cellular phone of the San Bernardino terrorist using most advanced recent Israeli hacking technology. If you were to talk to the chairman of the Intelligence Committee in the Senate or in the House, they would tell you that the scope of intelligence which the U.S. receives from Israel exceeds that which the U.S. receives from all NATO countries combined, focusing especially on Islamic terrorist attacks, potential attacks against American targets abroad and on the mainland. Israel maintains intelligence presence throughout the Middle East. We blend very easily into any Muslim country, any Arab country, due to the demography of Israel, which is very difficult, next to impossible, for Americans coming from a totally different demographic background. As a result, we have been a source of vital homeland security information, national security information for the US when it comes to Islamic terrorists active in Egypt or Jordan or Saudi Arabia. And that has led to a dramatic security cooperation between Israel and America's Arab allies. Right. In a very real sense, Israel has extended the strategic hand of the USA into the Middle East in a way which the US on its own would not be able to do. And that's obviously in addition for Israel being at this stage the most cost-effective, the most battle-tested laboratory of the American defense industry. We are employing right now a few hundred American military systems. Each one of them we operate on battle turf conditions, and as a result, we provide those hundreds of manufacturers in the US with real-time online lessons regarding the operation, maintenance, and repairs of those systems, which enhance the quality of the future American military defense products.
I'm so glad you're sharing this information, because folks, a lot of times we're hearing people, some on Capitol Hill, saying we should cut all aid to Israel, but it's so much deeper than that. Israel is a net benefit to the United States in so many ways, as you just described. And Chris, talking about the innovations against terror that Israel is making, that Yoram just laid out, what can America learn? Look, you're a journalist living here in Jerusalem. You've been here for 16 years, based in Israel. You've seen a lot, intifadas, terror waves here. This latest terror wave, this so-called stabbing intifada, it seems that they're kind of using the ISIS blueprint in a sense, these lone wolf, homegrown type attacks. So Chris, how is Israel countering this latest wave of terror? What have you seen covering this on the ground?
Well, I saw this 5 weeks after we arrived here in August of 2000. I lived just a few blocks away from here, and then went through the 3.5 years, maybe 4 years of the second intifada. Now we're going through what's called the stabbing intifada. I think what I would share with the American people is the fact how resilient the Israeli people have been through this. They've really been on the front lines of the war on terror, maybe even before the founding of the State of Israel. And so they have stood firm. And I think Americans need to realize that we're in the same kind of war. As you've said many times, Israel is the little Satan, but America is the great Satan. And I think people need to understand that we are in this war. That's what ISIS has declared, Al-Qaeda has declared, even Iran has declared war against the United States. And so I think that's the important thing. Why I wrote the book, ISIS, Iran, and Israel, I think that's number one thing I want to make people aware of in the United States is we are in this war. And there are different ways that it can be fought. Israel's the world leader in counterterrorism.
Yoram, look, Israel is the first line of defense for Western civilization. Talk about why Israel is so vital from a security standpoint for the average American watching who may not realize Israel's only the size of the state of New Jersey, but Israel is such a bulwark against this wave of terror that Chris described, Iran, ISIS. Talk about how Israel, in many ways, is all that's holding back the wolves of jihad from coming to the West.
Well, the Middle East is extremely vital as far as global economy is concerned, but mostly as far as the battle on terrorism and some economic considerations. If there wouldn't be Israel in the Middle East, the US would have to dispatch significantly more naval presence, air force presence, and ground presence, more military divisions, more aircraft carriers, which would have cost the American taxpayers some $15 or maybe $20 billion every single year. Instead, there is a Jewish state on the eastern flank of the Mediterranean, which constitutes a very powerful posture of deterrence on the side of the US against Islamic terrorism and other rogue regimes, which bolsters the homeland and national security of America's Arab allies, Egypt, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Abu Dhabi, Dubai, and extends the strategic arm of the USA. Israel, in many respects, has been the largest American aircraft carrier which cannot be sunk and is deployed in a critical area for America's national security.
Yoram, I think that's a great place to leave it, folks. We're going to the break. Much more coming up with Ambassador Yoram Ettinger, Chris Mitchell, author of ISIS, Iran, and Israel, and the EttingerReport.com, by the way, Yoram's website. He's got a great series of YouTube clips out as well that you need to check out. Much more coming up. It's the Watchman. It's Christians United for Israel, only right here on TBN. Stick around.